Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about every other feature of 8.2 that's coming in. Some swift opinion on these. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about Nazjatar and Mechagon, or even Operation Mechagon, despite the fact that I am excited for all three of those things. And the reason is they need playtesting. We have to playtest them pretty extensively to see exactly what is coming with them. We've been burned in the past, man. We've been burned in the past. Argus turned out to be not great for me. Some people love Argus, but I found it kind of just like another little playground of doing the same stuff we were already doing in a different atmosphere. And considering it was like a planetary outscape that we were playing in, I was hoping for a little bit more from there. Similar with the Broken Isles. The Broken Isles were actually fine. The Broken Shore was actually okay, but what we saw on the PTR and stuff was better than what we actually got on live. We got a lot more interesting things on the PTR than what we actually got on live, so I'm going to wait a little bit. I do have mixed reviews from people who played it at the Creator Summit. Some people thought it was really fun. Some people found it to just be a grind zone. Certainly in the case of Mechagon, they were just like, you just go and kill stuff and you get stuff. Like, some of the rares are okay, but, you know. Whereas other people were like, this offers a lot of things that I enjoy. So it probably will come down to, what do you like? Is this your jam? Is this not your jam? That will come down to it. Everybody's impressed by the size of Nazjatar and how that's going to unfold, but it will need extensive playtesting to really form a theory on that, and hopefully we will have that next week, so we can play around with it and get some stuff. One thing that is very cool is I like that they are introducing some customization to it. We are going to be building things on Mechagon. Is that going to be just contributing X resource to a vendor and eventually the bar will tick up and then we build things and then we do that over and over and over and over again? Or is that going to be something that's actually really fun and useful and something that we can enjoy? All these questions I have, like I said, I have mixed feedback from the guys who played it about whether or not that was just something they enjoy in the first place. Do they like logging in and grinding? Do they not? And therefore the opinions are pretty different on that. Mounts, 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 mounts. Boy, I hope you like your mounts. I hope you like your mounts, because this is all about the mounts. Probably in some direct feedback to the lack of mounts that came in the Emissary cachets for getting extra reputation, which people were using in Legion in order to access different mounts, despite the fact being annoyed by it, because it was random. But still, this patch is all about the mounts. And Mechagon is introducing, according to Talias and Nevertell, the ability to customize your mounts. There's actually a paint shop on Mechagon where you can customize the colors of the mechanical cat that you can get on the island. Now, hopefully this is a move in the right direction, allowing players to visually customize their mounts and really tailor them to what they like, because you know people want to have more ways to enhance their transmogs. So if they can then make their mounts match their transmogs, people will get really into that. And it might be a case of only new mounts come with this, or only a select few are allowed to do this. But if they are allowing people to customize those things, that's a whole genre of the game that needs to be explored fully, because I know so many people want like Need for Speed style customization on their mounts. We already see it with people who do hunter mogs, is that they get pets that match their mogs in order to make it look as beautiful as they can possibly do it. And I know for a fact people will spend hours fanning about with their mounts in order to get them absolutely perfect. Give them that opportunity. There's no power gain there. There's nothing else needed other than just customizational options. Great. Wonderful. Let's do more with that. That sounds really good. But on the subject of mounts then, mount equipment. Mount equipment, I am not digging this, which is probably coming as a surprise. Not that I'm not thankful for it, I guess, but it just feels really lackluster compared to what they could have gone with it. They've gone with the functional idea, which isn't inherently bad, but as we saw with Garrisons, people like more visual than functional. And that's what people expected with their Garrisons, is it to be more visual, more cosmetic than functional. So the mount equipment is just a slot that we will have on the mount UIs that you can get in game right now. And you will able to put one of 3 that are confirmed so far, mount equipments into that slot, like you would do with followers. And then all your mounts, every single mount, except for some very select few, are going to be affected by that piece of equipment. So we have a chute, which will deploy a parachute when you drop off your mount. We have one that prevents you being dazed, and we have some inflatable mount shoes that allows your mounts to go across water. So, okay. it seems really half-arsed. Why are we limiting every mount to having one thing? That's what I don't get. And also, this is coming with the point of Pathfinder. Now, I've no doubt people are going to be really hype about water walking, right? They're going to be so hype about water walking. They are taking water walking away from the Water Strider, and if you do have the Water Strider, if you did grind it out, then you will get a pair of water walking equipment, boots, in the mail for free. We're getting it at the same time as flying. Like, the parachute seems to be the only viable piece of equipment for me. Because you know what's better than walking across water? Flying over water. And you know when you don't get dazed? In the sky. Unless I'm missing something that's in the game, 2 of these 3 pieces of equipment seem dead on arrival for me. Because it arrives at the exact same time we're getting Pathfinder, so we'll be able to fly. Therefore, being able to have water walking mounts and anti-daze mounts, which you could already get in the game. These aren't new. Leatherworkers have been making this stuff, and blacksmiths have been making hardened stirrups and things like that nobody was really interested in the first place, from what I can gather. And some people didn't even know they existed. Yeah, like, why wouldn't you take the parachute? The parachute seems significantly better in all ways. So it just feels like why are we doing this? I would be far more interested for just more customization on when I use certain mounts. Like, I would really like to specify which zones certain mounts appear in. I would love to be able to do that. Like, I would like to assign my Water Strider to, say, Nazmir. But I don't use going across water in every zone. So I would like to be able to select certain mounts to only appear in certain zones. I'm a big fan of the favorites button. I have a number of mounts. I'm not a mount collector, but the mounts I do have are ones that I have some sort of history with, some sort of memory associated with them. That's why I like them. It's not particularly about the looks. It's just how I acquired them and was that interesting. So I have some rare mounts in there and some not so rare mounts in there, but they're things that I was really enjoying at the time. And just having this sort of blanket equipment slot. And you can already kind of see where the upgrades are going with this, like long term, because these are green items. There's no doubt going to be a blue one that does 2 and an epic one that does all 3 or something like that. And they might bring in some extra ones, so it's like you can interact on them. So they're leaving the Sky Golem alone, but the Sky Golem will not be affected by whatever the equipment slot is. So if you put water walking into your equipment slot, all your mounts will be able to walk on water, except things like the Sky Golem, because they have the herb gathering, and they're not going to take away the herb gathering until that equipment slot no doubt comes into the game, which is probably what's going to happen at some point. For me, this just feels like a big waste. Feels like a big waste. Now, I fully appreciate that doing cosmetics on every mount in the game is probably not impossible by any means, but an enormous piece of work because the model shapes and stuff are all different. I would have much preferred to be able to be very selective about what equipment certain mounts get and when I use those mounts. I would much rather have that system. So if I land in Vol'dun, for example, I don't need water walking, so I can select mounts that I would like to appear if I'm in the zone of Vol'dun, right? If I land in Nazmir, I would like something that walks on water. Let's do that. That seems more fun to me. I would like stuff that appears while I'm leveling. I would like stuff that appears if I'm in old content. I would like stuff, I would even go as far as to say I would like stuff that only appears during zones of a certain expansion because I have mounts that relate to that expansion. I would like to do that. Yeah? I would really, if I'm in Kata, I would probably like to use my Firebird, my Ragnaros mount, more often than not, because that kind of fits that zone. It's a little bit of RP, sure, but it makes sense to me, and that seems more interesting than this. And I would also like to say, instead of saying, seems to be Blizzard's take on it, is like, well, we put this one mount in the game with the water walking, and then we've kind of been held back by it, and people use it all the time. The solution to me is simple. Make more water walking mounts, so it's varied, so everybody's not looking at the same mount that they've had since Mr. Pandaria, I think the water walking strider came in. So they've been using the same water mount, and you've even had a boat come into the game that can't go across water. Like, we even have the Dreadwake. And I understand that is a store mount, essentially. But we just make more water walking stuff. Or give us the option to apply water walking to a variety of different mounts. Like, what the fuck does it matter? Really? What does it matter? if you want us to have customization, and it was a big takeaway from the presentation, is we want more customization for you, more customization for you. This is a very limited level of customization compared to what you could easily do, which is allow us to mix and match. You could even use the families of them, for Christ's sake. We could even do that. We could even say certain mounts have a bonus on sand, or they can do things like that. Certain mounts are better in jungle environments. Certain mounts are better in water environments. Certain mounts are better if climbing up mountains all the time. So if you're in something like, I forget the zone, Kunlai Summit, where you're going up and down vertically all the time, they're better in that environment, right? And allow us to be picky about which mounts we get in certain places, what we can do with them, and of course we know some mount customization is coming in terms of cosmetics, rather than this, because I can't see it as anything other than pretty much dead on arrival. Everybody's going to be like, oh, I have flying, because I'm sure the focus right now will be on like, oh, I can have water walking on my favorite mounts, that's so good. Yeah, I agree, but we're also about to be flying. Like, water walking is about to be a non-thing completely. So, I mean, why wouldn't you take the parachute? Unless I'm missing something, I'd be like, why wouldn't you take the parachute? I really was interested. Sloot talked a lot more about this, about the changes they're making to Mythic Plus, which is that they're going to be adding in more debuffs similar to Sated to stop things like Shroud from rogues. Because they don't want to take Shroud away, because Shroud's a really cool ability. It's something that really fits the theme of the rogue. They don't want to get rid of that. I understand that completely. I think that's fair. But they are going to be saying, we don't want you double shrouding. We don't want you doing things like that. And they're also going to change up how trash works. Now, he was a little facetious, I think, when he said this, which is that Blizzard doesn't think you're killing enough trash in Mythic Plus. Now, what he could have probably said better there is that they don't think you're killing the right types of trash for what they want. Because generally, the most efficient way of gaining percentage in Mythic Plus is to pull as many enemies as you can that won't kill you and AoE everything down. Right? That's the most efficient way of doing things. And the guys pushing the higher keys will find techniques and methods to pull ever-increasing amounts of mobs with ever-increasing amounts of dangerous mobs that most pugs certainly can't handle, and checking whether or not they have the damage and the control in order to AoE down all those mobs before they start casting their spells, essentially, and start doing the things that makes them super dangerous in a normal environment. What they actually want to do is make it so that you will deal more with the mini-boss style enemies, the larger enemies, the ones that people will go absolutely incredibly out of their way to avoid, because it's one big enemy. It's not giving anywhere near enough the same percentage as the 30 enemies we could kill in the same amount of time. It's just not up there. So what they're going to do is shift around the percentage rewards so that killing those mini-boss style enemies is worthwhile. And that, hopefully, should shake up the meta, so it's not just about AoE burst classes. So that is a really delicate act to balance, because if you get a very coordinated group, really hard to get those guys in order to say, we can pull... I mean, this mini-boss needs to be the equivalent of, like, us setting up to kill, like, 50 mobs, some of which are dangerous and therefore reward a decent amount of percentage, because we can chain stun them down, then we can silence them, and then we can control them, and by then they're dead. And we're using classes that have uncapped AoE and things like that. So it's a good effort. I agree with their idea. I personally would like to deal with more mini-boss style things. And after playing Sekiro recently, having just lots and lots of interesting mini-bosses is good. It's really good stuff. Not everything has to be like, this dungeon has 3 main bosses and then a bunch of low-level, nameless enemies along the way. I think that's a fair shout, is to have more interesting variety of enemies that feel like mini-bosses, and even then you can say they reward a little bit of AP. I mean, back in the day you would say they give a badge or something like that. But some beneficial system there, which is, so you have this choice. This is what they want. If you picture the Motherlode, the accepted way of dealing with Motherlode for many people is to just clear out the first area, and it's really boring. It's really, really boring. But what if instead, in that central building that's in the middle of that village that you approach at the very beginning of the Motherlode, there's actually a rather large mini-boss enemy that gives equivalent trash to clearing most of that area. But he's quite hard to deal with, so you might want to go down that route if you have a more single-target orientated group, And that should mix up classes that are involved, so it's not just a case of bringing burst AoE classes. Now we want some really good single target classes, because we're going to be dealing with more mini-bosses than we are just large trash pulls. So I think that's a decent endeavor. I really do think that's a decent endeavor. And we've already seen, as of today, as of recording this, the first wave of nerfs has gone out to basically the classes that cause the problems in the MDI. It's always amazing to me how much the MDI does affect class balance and how quickly it does it. So we've seen buffs to Vengeance Demon Hunters and Guardian and Feral Druids, while some nerfs towards Resto Druids, and also some nerfs to Outlaw Rogues and Protection Warriors in terms of their outgoing DPS, which is not something we should be surprised about. Not something we should be surprised about. Some fan sites, actually, I was just noticing an MMO Champion did mention that player housing is still on the menu. They're just not sure how to implement it. This was something I was going to bring up with Blizzard, because there's a lot of options in order for them to do that. And it's all about cosmetic. You probably noticed recently, despite the fact that I'm very, very into the gameplay of the game and the combat aspects, a lot of what I feel the game is missing isn't that stuff, despite the fact that it's clearly a problem area. But it's actually just, I am a big fan of more systems that aren't power rewards. And I think that's coming from the perspective, and I mentioned it yesterday in Heart of Azeroth, is that I'm already way too powerful in the game. Already. And that's crazy. I'm already way, way too powerful. The last thing I need is yet more power right now. I want more gameplay options. I want more things that you can mess around with and tinker with and just generally have fun with that don't need to reward power or anything. And that comes in the form of cosmetics. It comes in the form of cosmetics, customization, things that you want to show other players and be proud of that don't reward just 5% more damage, 10% more damage, 20% more damage. It's always been the case that people will spend an eternity messing around with this stuff. Both things need to be addressed for sure. And I think player housing is something they should definitely come back to and do something with, because other games are doing it and doing it well. And I know the game is old, but you should definitely have something alongside that. So I'd love to see your thoughts on this. Do you agree with me, particularly about the mounts and mount equipment? There are some very cool mounts coming. The crab in particular is something I've wanted since I saw it. But the mount equipment, there's so many better ways this could have gone. And I feel like they're locked in now. I feel like now they've introduced it, they're somewhat locked in, and I don't want that to be the case. I look forward to see your thoughts. Thank you very much. See you again. Bye-bye.